Zimbabweans if they would have thought that the European Union is the cause of our problems. I would not be able to accept that kind of a proposition. Stay down.
Good evening, viewers, and welcome to this edition of Free Talk, where we believe that free speech is an essential ingredient and center of development in any democracy. This program is proudly brought to you by Heart and Soul TV and Radio in partnership with the Frederick Newman Foundation. Now, this program, we discuss anything political, socio-economic, to enhance the development and democracy of Zimbabwe. And we this evening are joined in studio by the ambassador, the head of the European Union in Zimbabwe, Ambassador Timo Olkkonen. And he's going to be taking us through the issues to do with Zimbabwe, its prospects in business, given its political scenario. And we're going to be getting into detail on the politics, the human rights, and the business prospects of this country. Welcome and thank you very much, Ambassador, for joining us.
Thank you very much, Blessed. It's a pleasure to be here again.
Yeah. Amazing. Now, Ambassador, we just want to go deep into the chase. Zimbabwe, actually the whole world has been affected by COVID-19, and this has affected business and human endeavors seriously. And Zimbabwe is looking to have a reset, a restart, given that it has had a tumultuous economic past. Now, how does its political environment at the moment help it or draw it back from the international community's view?
All right, that's there's quite a few things to be addressed, what you just mentioned, Blessed, in that regard. First of all, you know, obviously the COVID pandemic is a global phenomenon, so it's hit all countries on the in the globe in a variety of ways. Europe has taken severe hits, you know, the first wave, the second wave, and it's still difficult for us there. And then there's the question about its influence on the economy, which is severe, and then you have all these, you know, global packages of trying to resuscitate the global economy. Have that in Europe, in North America, the international financial institutions are looking at that. Then there's the social effects that come, you know, partly because of the economy, but also partly because of, you know, the consequences of all the restrictions and lockdowns and so. And then there's this political side of issues, and here EU has been very vocal at the global level that the corona epidemic should not mean an infringement of, it should not be used as an excuse of, trampling on citizens' rights and human rights and so. Now coming to the Zimbabwean situation, like you said, Zimbabwe had severe economic problems even before the pandemic, social issues also before the pandemic, and then the pandemic came and it exacerbated these issues. First on the economy, of course the economy has taken a hit because of the corona epidemic for a variety of reasons. And then there's the social side, which is, a big cause for concern because, especially, because so many people in Zimbabwe are dependent on the informal economy and trying to make their livelihoods and, survive on the basis of, vending and trading and doing all these kind of things and you have seen a lot of pressure on the social side and on the social networks and social structures. And then there's the political issues, and there of course you need to have a balanced view. You have to look at what is the need for health and safety, and we have a lot of sympathy for many of the restrictions in terms of the lockdown. Because you really need to, and we have taken similar measures also in many European countries, most of the European countries, of restrictions of, how people can move and, and trade and go to the shops and so forth. So it's understandable. But then the question is that, that you should also equally apply these kind of restrictions. And there you would have questions marks here in Zimbabwe that, people have been, I've heard about journalists, for example, have had problems of doing their work. You have had these well-known court cases about people being arrested and then imprisoned because of infringement on the COVID restrictions. But then you have other cases where it's publicly known that there has been infringements, but there has been no consequences. So there are these questions of equal applications, and so what is really important is that people's citizens' rights are respected, and this is something that we are also discussing with the government.
You talk about the unequal implementation, or that there are people who are unequal in terms of the law. Do you have any specific issues that you have observed that have worried you?
Well, I wouldn't want to go into details. When you take up one case, then you start debating one case and its own merits. But in overall, when you look at what consequences some people have had because of their, they have been accused about not respecting the lockdown restrictions, the consequences have been very, very severe, and then you question whether that's equal application of the law.
Yeah. This is like where you have had a problem with Zimbabwean government, where they've accused you, when you say these things, of meddling into their political terrain and behaving undiplomatically. How do you so plead?
Well, this is, like I say, this is a question of European foreign policy. We are saying this also from the Brussels level. We are saying it globally, that it applies to all the countries that, look, we are going, the whole world is going through difficult times, but it means that we shouldn't be backtracking on our commitments to global values such as human rights and citizens' rights and political rights. Rights that are prescribed in the Zimbabwean constitution, but are also part of Pan-African commitments and commitments done with the UN of respecting people's rights. So,
where does sovereignty come in here? Because Zimbabwe behaves in a sovereign manner, and they believe that they have a right to do what they're doing because it's their country.
Well, like I said, it's about the universal principles that we have all been subscribed to, and I think, from the point of view of the European Union, we have a duty of reminding ourselves, each others, and that's also something that is, even in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, that we should take action of promoting these values globally. So that's what we are doing. We don't want to meddle into, internal Zimbabwean politics, and you can rightly say that that's not the job of a diplomat to do. You know, it's not. We don't want to go into partisan politics or so, but we do take these issues up when we have a concern, because the European Union, its member states, and also Zimbabwe have committed themselves to these.
But this unequal applications, as you said, how does it affect Zimbabwe's business prospects and its movement from economic challenges?
Well, I would say I think on the term of the economic side and on the investment side, you know, the issue is more about you know, the overall investment and business climate. I'm not able to say whether individual cases would have an influence and so, but what I know is that there are concerns about the equal application of rule of law as it comes to business and investment as well. Issues such as security of tenure, security of investment, respect of bilateral investment protection agreements, and recourse to rule of law. So if you would have a dispute, that you would know that you would also be fairly treated. You know, these things are of importance for European investors, and there is uneasiness, you know, amongst investors, you know, whether they would have recourse to these issues, and it's hampering investments to Zimbabwe.
Now, there's been also this discussion over the Patriotic bill, and we have noted that the EU is concerned about it. Can you explain where your concern lies?
Well, you know, the Patriot bill, of course, we don't have that. We don't have a proposal in the Parliament yet, so we don't know what it would look like if it would be presented. But what has been discussed in the public, you know, in terms of its principles and so, like you said, are indeed a cause of concern for us, because it seems to be very restrictive of Zimbabwean civil society and their opportunities to operate and interact with us. You know, if it would be with us or other, you know, foreign international partners, and that would be a very regrettable way forward if that would be the case, because we from the EU side, we value the civil society very much as a partner in development. We do think that the civil society also has an important watchdog role vis-à-vis their governments. That's equally true in Zimbabwe as it would be in Europe. There needs to be checks and balances, you know, what the authorities are doing, and civil society has an important role in this. And also, in terms of, you know, even service delivery and development cooperation, they are a very important partner for us, not only in Zimbabwe, but, you know, globally. So, you know, as we see from the discussion that has been taking place in the public about, you know, what the Patriotic Act could look like, we see that, you know, putting severe constraints about how we could, how the civil society could operate in Zimbabwe and how we could cooperate with the civil society. So it is a cause of concern.
But you've been accused in the past of trying to use the civil society to destabilize a constitutionally elected government. And now this stops this. Why are you worried then? Because when you don't interact with civil society, then those allegations are not there.
That's nonsense. You know, it's like we have nothing to hide on this regard. You know, this is a narrative that, you know, keeps on resurfacing, and it's taken up that we would, you know, have this kind of an agenda. That would be completely inappropriate. That would, you know, basically, you know, then we would be, you know, hostile towards towards Zimbabwe as a country and its government, you know, and that's absolutely not the case, you know. So I would completely, you know, rubbish these theories that we would, you know, use the civil society for these kind of, you know, this whole regime change agenda. You know, it's I absolutely, you know, refute this kind of allegation. So it doesn't even come to the picture.
There also is an argument that in Europe you've got such legislation that makes people more when they engage in issues of terror against their country and stuff like that, and more in the United States of America where there's the Logan Act, and you haven't spoken against the Logan Act in the United States of America. So why are you speaking against the Patriotic bill in Zimbabwe?
Well, I don't know the U.S. and it's not my job, to comment on U.S. affairs. I hear from our American colleagues that the Logan Act is not being implemented, actually. But I don't want to go into that and can't comment on that. But there's, obviously, countries have genuine security concerns, and terrorism is again, a global, well, not maybe a global, but nearly a global threat. It's a problem in many countries. So there's justified security concerns, and there's legislation in various countries, also in European countries, of addressing, these kind of threats to people's lives and security. But that's a completely different thing, of making this kind of an umbrella denial of interacting with international partners or restricting the operations of civil society. That's no country is perfect. We have issues also in Europe and in some European countries in this regard. The freedom of certain societies, it varies in degrees. So it's constant effort that is needed to safeguard people's rights, citizens' rights, and also of the ability of civil society to operate.
Let me take you back to the restrictions that you spoke about earlier. Zimbabwe has a constitution and electoral act that sets up how elections are supposed to be done. Are you concerned that Zimbabwe is failing to have by-elections because of COVID, or this is a restriction that's reasonable in your view?
Yeah. Well, different countries take different kind of actions, as regards the pandemic. We do see that in the parliament there's many seats are vacant now because of the recalls, and we do hope that, the people, the citizens in those constituencies would get, representatives back into the parliament, because currently, many people don't have representatives in the parliament. So we would hope that, there would be a possibility to organize elections in a manner so that people would also feel represented. But then again, when you go into the details of how to make sure that, these elections would be safe and secure and not contributing to the spread of the pandemic, that's then another discussion. We've seen some other African countries have been able to organize elections, and maybe there are lessons learned, about how these have been possible. So yes, I think the primary principle should be that in a democracy people should be represented in the parliament. So we do hope that there would be a way to find out a way to make this possible.
But you see this move as reasonable in your view?
Well, like I said, I can't go into the details. I don't know what exactly the resources would be out there and what would be the modus operandi to organize that it would be safe and secure. But like I said, I think there are examples out there that it has been possible.
There's been a view also expressed by the United States of America, but I know you come from the European Union, but that view has been that there's been a systematic attack on the opposition, mainly the MDCAlliance in this country, especially through those recalls. What is your view on that?
Well, like I said, I don't want to go into the partisan politics. There's the recent developments, during the past year and a half or so has been quite, raised quite a lot of attention. It's been, how they have panned out and so. But I would not be able to comment on the process as such and how it went about. I think what is important really is that people would, feel that they are enfranchised, that they have their representatives in the parliament. And also what I think would be very important in any given democracy is that there's a healthy and a viable opposition that would challenge the government, because that creates that democratic discourse that you challenge, you offer alternatives, and this would be very important in Zimbabwe.
Is it there at the moment?
I think the public discourse, there's, going in, even into issues such as, any policy area. I would hope that there would be a more in-depth discussion also in sectoral policies and more alternatives thought out. Whilst there is, criticism towards the government, and the government is explaining its policy moves, I do think that there's always room for improvement.
As you speak, just recently you had a meeting with the leader of the MDCT, and there was a lot of issues that have been discussed in the social media about your meeting. Can you clarify what exactly happened at that meeting?
Well, it was a long meeting. It was a very interesting one. We met with the MDCT team. We were, the European Union, the ambassadors are meeting with different, political parties that are represented in the parliament. We met also with the MDCA, and we also planning to meet with ZANU-PF, hopefully, sometimes in the near future. What we went through was that, what would be their, policy choices, like we're discussing what would be their policies, how do they see things moving forward, how they see the forthcoming 2023 elections. So there's a range of issues that we discussed with them.
And there was a specific issue that was coming through that you refused to recognize them as the main opposition party in the country. Now, can you address that particular issue?
Well, like I said, I don't want to go into partisan politics. So, various parties are there, and they are having their own discussions, and their relations with government and so forth, and their dialogue that is going on. It's not for me to say who is the official opposition and who is not. It's part of internal Zimbabwean politics.
But when last time we spoke, we spoke about the issues of Pollard and the dialogue that was going on, and you expressed concern that Nelson Chamisa or the MDCAlliance was missing from that dialogue. Now that these developments, the reason I ask you this question is that these developments, do they or do they not change your perspective in terms of Nelson Chamisa being there on the sitting table?
Bless, you're very keen on talking about partisan politics in Zimbabwe. I'm not very well equipped to answer that because it's not really part of my job. But I remember our discussion on this issue, and the reason why I was, saying, pointing that things out is that we would want to have an inclusive political dialogue, because I think we are good. That's good for democracy. So I think all the main there should be a healthy political discourse about policy alternatives, how the country moves forward, and that was also one of the reasons why we thought that the MDCA should be part of those discussions. But whereas they would be joining Pollard or proposing other alternatives or arrangements or so, we never took a position on that. That's really for the parties themselves to decide. But indeed, I think what Zimbabwe would benefit from is to have an inclusive overall debate where a variety of views could be expressed, and then basically it would be that the best ideas would then be put into action.
You also have expressed concern over the arrest, detention, and denial of freedom of particularly Johanna Mamombe, Cecilia Chimbili, and Netsai Maroa. How does these things affect the general re-engagement policy of Zimbabwe, especially with the EU?
Well, it is a question of human rights and citizens' rights. And there's like, whereas I would not want to go into individual cases, but of course, there are these prominent cases that are also in the public. You know, and then there are, you know, many issues about, you know, whether, you know, there's fair and equal treatment before the law. You know, for example, in the case you referred to, there was a long, you know, pre-trial incarceration and denial of bail, which is still continuing, and you know, and then, you know, the consequences from not so, you know, from infringements that doesn't seem so severe. You know, the consequences seem to be quite severe. And then we have other cases, you know, for example, referred to corruption and so, where, you know, the consequences seem to be much more mild. So it raises the question about, you know, fair and equal treatment amongst. So we take these issues up. As you know, because when you look at values and human rights values and citizens' rights values, you know, they materialize through action and how they are implemented. Now, the judiciary should be independent. It should be, you know, operate independently. And I don't want to comment, you know, on the issue about, you know, like, is it independent or not? But, you know, there's the equality before the law and fair treatment should be principles that should be respected.
But well, I know you say you don't want to comment, but are you worried about what is happening within the judicial system? Is there any worries from you?
Well, when you look at, you know, the disproportionate use of law, it raises questions. And you know, looking back at Zimbabwean history, you know, problems have been there. So it is clearly an issue that we're also following.
People have tried to demonstrate against some of these injustices that you speak about. People have tried to speak up. What has followed is arrests. Some have been beaten up and injured. So where does the citizen turn to in this instance? Because all it seems is that the international community just talks about it and does nothing.
Well, what would you expect the international community to do? It's our primary interlocutors are, you know, of course, in a country for any diplomatic mission is you know, the government, and we are discussing about these things and raising these concerns with our dialogue with the government. You know, we go public sometimes, but, you know, oftentimes we don't go, and then we discuss and you know, and raise our concerns. And indeed, it's like in human rights, it's an issue about duty bearers and rights holders, and the citizens are the rights holders, and you know, the authorities are the duty bearers. And we all, you know, raising these issues about, you know, whether people, you know, can manifest and have their rights, and that's really important. You're talking about, you know, it's like if people can demonstrate, and obviously in times of Corona, it's always a question about how you could do that, you know, while, you know, respecting, you know, the fact that people, you know, should stay healthy and not, you know, risk themselves with the Corona thing. There's a balance to be struck there, you know, about what consequences a person could have, you know, and if they follow, you know, the rules regarding, you know, demonstrations and such. Another area is the freedom of speech and, you know, the media. And that's also something that we keep on constantly discussing with the government about, you know, allowing the possibility to...
but are your discussions working anyhow?
Well, at least we are trying. We are discussing, and there's positive moves. For example, you know, I referred to the media legislation. There are some positive moves with the Freedom of Information Act. You know, more licenses have been given out for radio operators. Now there are issues about, you know, exactly how that has been implemented. But, you know, there are, you know, still you have to recognize that there are some steps forward, and that's why, for example, we are concerned about something like the Patriotic bill, that we hope that it would not mean 2 steps backwards when some steps have been taken forward. So the picture is a bit mixed.
But the reason I ask this is that the Western world has reacted to some of these things by imposing sanctions on Zimbabwe. And these sanctions affect the same people that they purport to be trying to defend. So where is the general person's, messiah from? Because the sanctions will hurt the same people.
No, I would dispute that. That sanctions are hurting the people. I've been asking for evidence. How this works. Because this claims has been repeated over and over again, and I've been asking for evidence of how what that would mean, and particularly regards the European Union measures that are there for a reason. They are because of past human rights infringements, and we are following the human rights situation, and that's why the remaining measures are there. But at the current scope, they are very limited. As you know, we've been discussing this, I think several times. That there's this, basically the active measures consist of an arms embargo and the Zimbabwe defense industries. And now the claim that this would hurt the normal, the people on the streets or in the villages, it's nonsense.
Because now the government will have to buy arms through third parties and becomes more expensive, and now they're digging into money that could be used for development. I mean, these are some of the arguments that have come through.
Yeah, well, it's like if Zimbabwe's development is contingent of buying arms from Europe, I think that gives a very strange view about, the need for development in the country. And the question is, what is more important in terms of investment? I find that formulation a little bit odd. That it would be, that arms trade would somehow hamper development in Zimbabwe. I find the whole question a little bit
But
strange.
there's also been a view that Zimbabwe has been treated unfairly. You look at the recent elections in Uganda and what happened there in Uganda, but there was less attention or less noise from the EU or any action against Museveni for that matter. But everybody could see that the elections that happened in Uganda were more than a farce than what has happened in Zimbabwe.
Well, the EU has been critical about the situation and the elections and many of the aspects of the elections. But then again, it's, I'm not responsible for Uganda, so I really can't comment too much on that. Whereas in the Zimbabwean context, we are referring to the human rights violations that happened in the past, at the times when the measures were put in place. And then there has been developments. We have, most of the measures have been dropped since 2013, 2014.
But you renewed some just recently.
No, it's we have renewed the measures that were still in place there, and there has been questions about, for example, the actions of the security forces in Zimbabwe and the respect of human rights and political rights and citizens' rights and that. And like you see, if you look at the measures that are in place, they are linked, to security forces. So it's a part of the history and the continuation and a continuing observation of the human rights situation and why the remaining measures are still there.
But you also were worried about the Mhlanga Commission report and how government is implementing, and I know you have political dialogues with government. To what extent has anything changed on the implementation of the Mhlanga Commission report from the time we last met to now?
Well, we would like to have seen more progress on the Mhlanga Commission report. We still don't have clarity about the culprits for the killings that happened in August 2018. So there's still impunity, which is I think is a key issue. And the reason why it's important is that because it was not the first time in Zimbabwean history when you had politically related violence and then impunity prevailed. So that's why it would be important to have a change in this culture. So that's one of the issues. But then there's a range of recommendations and that have not been implemented, and we are following this. It's a kind of an indicator of where we are.
So, given these issues that a lot of things continue to worry you about Zimbabwe, what are we likely to see an extension of sanctions, any renewal, or what would be your recommendation to Brussels in regard to relations with Zimbabwe?
Well, again, I'm here to implement the foreign policy that is decided in Brussels. So
But you are the key information officer for you, the link.
Well, I'm one of them, but we're member states are here, and there's plenty of, and not even all EU member states are represented in Zimbabwe. So that's a key thing, and that's why we had this. If you look at the declaration that we issued in February, that was a declaration by all the 27 EU member states. Agreed by all the EU 27 member states, so it carries a lot of weight, and that's my guidebook. That's where I take my cue and my messages and how I implement the policies, because I'm a humble servant here, like civil servants should be. So, but then on the issue about the measures, and I would not like to dwell on these measures too much, because it's just a fraction of our relations with Zimbabwe, and there's it's like I said, they're quite limited, and there's many other issues to be talked about. But on this, it's what is very important for us, that we are looking at the human rights situation on the ground. We are following that. We will see the evolution of how that goes, positive, negative trajectories, and then make our recommendations accordingly.
But the reason I asked this ambassador is Zimbabwe would need debt forgiveness for it to be able to find itself in any serious economic revival trajectory, because it's being heavily weighed down by debts, especially from the Paris Club, the World Bank, and IMF. Some countries have benefited from this debt relief, and Zimbabwe has that albatross hanging on her neck. And it is chiefly your work that might change or make this worse. So what would be your recommendation, given our current state in Zimbabwe?
Well, the issue on the debt relief is again separate from the restrictive measures or sanctions, so to speak. People, mix these things up, and they think, that the debt issue is not having access to international credit is because of the measures, and that's not the case. Zimbabwe defaulted on its debts in the late 90s, and since then has not had access to international concessional credit. From the IFIs or
But countries like Malawi have been forgiven. Other countries have had their debts forgiven. Why not Zimbabwe?
That is the thing, because that time there was the HIPIC initiative that was taking place, and that was some more than 10 years ago that those initiatives were taking place. Zimbabwe didn't qualify for the HIPIC initiative at that time. We have been hopeful that measures would be taken, in terms of economic reform that would facilitate an avenue for Zimbabwe to move forward with some kind of debt rearrangements. And one of the stepping stones, an important stepping stones in this, would have been this IMF program, the staff monitored program, which Zimbabwe and the IMF agreed upon, and was then discontinued, a bit more than a year ago. So that would have, given a kind of an economic blueprint of how to move forward with macroeconomic stabilization, and then moving forward, with other possible solutions. The marching order should be that Zimbabwe should all first agree and repay its debts to the international financial institutions, and after that to the bilaterals, to the Paris Club members and so forth. But this is contingent on a pathway of economic reforms. And whilst the government, you have to give credit that they have managed to stabilize the macroeconomic environment, one can debate the social cost for that, but some things have happened. But those kind of structural reforms that would be needed to address some very very important issues such as corruption and so have not yet taken place. So I think these kind of issues are things that our finance ministries are looking at. Currently, the spring meetings of the IFIs is ongoing. They are looking at supporting the global economy, whilst you can't de-link politics and economy, this matter is first and foremost linked to the fact that Zimbabwe defaulted on its debt and has not serviced it.
But some, with the COVID, Zimbabwe does not have reserves to be able to resuscitate business, to be able to. There was a promise that the government will release 18 trillion, but that's just Zimbabwean dollars, and they're just like almost nothing. And without the support of the international financial institutions, that recovery, even from COVID, will almost non-existent.
Well, it's like I said, there's international principles that need to be adhered to.
But can't you waiver that? Because, we're in a pandemic, we're in a crisis.
Yes, but it's there's issues such revolving around, the debt issue is not, that's part of, the whole international economic environment where Zimbabwe is.
But what would it take for Zimbabwe for you to give an ear to it? To give an ear, to say, let us do something.
But we are giving an ear. We have been supporting Zimbabwe substantially with the economic front. We have a substantial support for the agricultural sector. We have trade facilitation support. We have also for the private sector development. So I think your question is a bit unfair, that we would not be doing anything for Zimbabwe.
But I'm talking about in terms of reviving its business, because Zimbabwe would not want these handouts. It would want to have business working and be able to even contribute to the COVAX fund, because they would be able to make their own money, is it not?
But that is contingent on the business environment. Like I said, European investors, because Zimbabwe is a very interesting country. The mineral wealth, the agricultural potential, the tourism potential. It's an absolutely amazing country. So Zimbabwe is not poor. It has a lot of wealth, and European businesses and investors would be interested in operating here. The question is the overall business and investment environment, and why it's not ticking, and why is it not able to get these kind of investors in the country that would boost then the economy, provide employment and economic growth. That is not contingent on financial flows only.
Then let us also just briefly touch on on the future of Zimbabwe and EU relations. What does it look like?
Well, I don't have a crystal ball. I don't know. There's interesting developments ongoing. We are looking forward for our next political dialogue that we will hopefully have in the near future. Other things are going on. Zimbabwe is in the Eastern and Southern African group of states negotiating an expansion of the economic partnership agreement. I think that's exciting because it's touching on some of these areas of economic governance as well. We are talking about issues that I've been discussing, like procurement, competitiveness, services and such like. And we hope that it will open up avenues also for economic cooperation. And Zimbabwe still have, of course, the free access to the European markets in terms of trading goods. So the opportunities are there on the economic front to expand. I will be very keen to see the trade figures, because there's anecdotal evidence that horticultural exports have in fact increased to the European markets. But then there's also, of course, the political, overall political situation and the situation with human rights that we are following very closely. And I have a bit the feeling that people are already starting to look at the 2023 elections. But we hope that it won't stall this reform agenda. For example, many of the recommendations that the electoral observation missions put in place after the 18 elections are still pending attention, and while I know that there's some work ongoing, we have not seen them put into practice. So we are very closely following the political environment also as we are moving towards the next elections, and of course then trying to play our part in the social and economic sphere. And it's also a very interesting time for us because the EU is at the junction now of planning its future cooperation with Zimbabwe. We came to an end to our former multi-annual financial framework, and from 21 to 27 we will have another one. So we are right in the midst now of planning ahead for the future. So many things are happening now at the same time.
So in the planning, I know you were supporting the Zimbabwe Anti-Corruption Commission through the jurist part. But are you satisfied with the fight on corruption that you might consider continuing that relationship?
Well, I can't say exactly what will happen without future support. I think corruption remains a very persistent and important issue in Zimbabwe. I don't think we have seen a lot of convictions from corrupt practices. There's individual cases, but there's grand corruption, but that one would hope to see that there would be consequences for the culprits, because it's well known, and like the ZAC chair herself has mentioned, the magnitude of corruption in the country is flabbergasting. So I think ZAC has a difficult work to do. But whether we will be supporting them or any other particular institution is still, a part of our discussions and how we are planning to go ahead.
But when they launched their anti-corruption campaign, I remember you saying very strong words at that particular meeting, and you also said that there's this catch and release. Have anything substantial happened from that time to change your view that you held, I think it's some 2 years ago to today?
Well, like I said, there's some convictions, some consequences to a certain level, but I don't think we have seen a transformative change in the culture. So I think the magnitude of the problem is still there. And I do think, a number of Zimbabweans, also in ZAC, are doing valiant efforts of trying to tackle this whole problem, this whole culture, and so.
So if a valiant effort is being made, why aren't you satisfied?
Well, I'm not saying, again, it's not for me just being headmasters and giving, points about, where we are with this.
But you're putting your money there, so you must be concerned, and this is taxpayers' money from Europe.
If it would be our money, if that would be a completely different thing. If we would find a corruption scandal involving EU taxpayers' money, then that would be indeed extremely serious. I thought you were referring to more as a more global problem in Zimbabwe, but indeed any misuse of our.
Yeah, I meant you supporting using taxpayers' money.
Okay.
So when you support using your taxpayers' money, obviously you must be worried about the results.
Well, results and outcomes from our project are extremely important. But I'm quite happy with the results that we have had with our program so forth this far. We have quite a stringent follow-up mechanism within the EU. We have so-called key performance indicators and seeing how our project move about. And while nothing is 100% perfect, I think we have been able to reach quite substantial results with our cooperation programs. But it's true that it makes it difficult to operate when you need to make them corruption proof and misuse proof, because the last thing that I would want is to have European taxpayers' money ending up in the wrong pockets. And we are very vigilant, and that also restricts how we can operate in Zimbabwe.
You also spoke about the political environment in your projections for the future. Recently, the United States of America produced a report that said that there's a systematic attack against the opposition, especially when the recalls and stuff like that. Do you identify anyhow with that report?
Well, like I said, having a viable opposition that challenges and questions the government is very, very important. So I do recognize those concerns that when you don't have that kind of an opposition that would have a mandate from elections, it's an important issue, and that's why I can understand why those statements have been made.
But do you identify with those statements?
Well, like I said, I would not want to go into partisan politics and comment on that. Yeah.
But would you say it's partisan politics, because we're looking at the general human rights that you're talking about? People have a right to be represented by people that they have elected. Mm. And from you understanding these concerns, certainly means that people are not being represented by people they've been elected.
Which is the case now when people have been recalled, and that's why there would need to be a remedy for that, and there would need to be elections for people to express their will. And that's why, we hope that, this situation would be, addressed. Yeah.
But if this was to happen in Europe, where a political party that went to elections be recalled by members of a party that they had contested against, would this make sense?
This is, there's many things in the Zimbabwean political context and the legal environment, and for example, the strength of political parties vis-à-vis their the representatives that have been elected, that are quite different from many of the European jurisdictions. So this is quite. I haven't encountered. This might exist in other countries as well, but I haven't encountered that, and I'm not familiar. So this is the first time I meet this kind of a situation.
An area of study, maybe?
Could be an area of study. Could be. Yes. Yeah. All countries have historical traditions, and you need to tailor the situation. But maybe there are lessons to be learned from these kind of events.
But what would be your advice to Zimbabweans and Zimbabwean political players in trying to take this country forward?
Well, it's very difficult as a foreigner to come and lecture and apart from the universal principles that we should adhere to, about how to move your country forward and what decisions to take. Primarily it's like Zimbabwean issues need Zimbabwean solutions. You can't prescribe it directly from elsewhere. But what I think is that every democracy needs a vibrant discussion on alternatives, and a healthy, respectful discussion on alternatives. What is the best economic policy in this situation? How to tackle governance issues, so that there would be substantial and preferably a facts-based discussion about policy choices to be made. And I think this would be something that one would hope to see more in any country. Of course, we have issues also in Europe about populism and identity-centered politics. But if you think about what is good for the country and the people, it's about what policy choices serve the country and its population best, and there would be a kind of like a battle of ideas instead of battle for personalities. I think that would be good in any given circumstance.
Constitutional amendments that are happening, do you think this would be a battle of ideas or battle of self-preservation?
Yeah, I think it would be. I'll be very keen to see the discussion in Parliament about how they will pan out.
With 48 members of Parliament missing.
Well, that's one of the issues that I hope will be addressed. And of course, a constitution in any given country is an extremely important document. The Constitution of 2013 in Zimbabwe is a very progressive document, and that was also one of the reasons why we could take some positive steps in the EU-Zimbabwe relations. The promulgation of that document. The EU supported its preparations, and we've been supporting the constitutional alignment process of taking the secondary legislation in line with the Constitution and its principles. So I think, and ultimately, it's of course for the Zimbabweans to decide what they do with their own constitutions. But I think what would be useful would be an overall discussion, an encompassing discussion about what to do with it. So these kind of consultative processes are very important, not only within the Parliament, but what should be taken prior. Which is also a very interesting thing, which I think is a very positive thing in Zimbabwe, that you have these consultative arrangements, going out to the provinces and discussing with people, and I don't think those kind of fora should be taken seriously.
So you don't think should be taken seriously?
Sorry?
You said you don't think those kind of fora should be taken seriously.
I think there's those consultative processes. People should be, the elected representatives should be listening to what people also say to them.
Mm-hmm. As we wrap up this amazing, it was amazing having a conversation with you on this platform in partnership with Frederick Newman Foundation and Heart and Soul TV and radio. But I would want you maybe to speak, from your heart, probably to the people of Zimbabwe, to the government, on your mission as head of the EU delegation. Well,
I had the opportunity to travel in Zimbabwe a little bit, during the Easter break, and after a long lockdown stay in our houses and so on, it struck me again what an astonishingly beautiful country this is. It is really a special place on earth, and people. Should be proud of living in country of such beauty. And I think the opportunities really to take Zimbabwe forward is there. And of course, Zimbabwe, as the whole world, is reeling from the current, corona situation as such. But I hope that we'll be overcoming it soon. And I truly hope that there will be this kind of a policy mix that then would bring about investors and tourists, and that Zimbabwe would, be open to the world and cooperate. And we hear good words from the government that saying that Zimbabwe wants to be friends to everyone and enemy to none. And I think that should also, I would hope that it would also, manifest itself into an openness of friends from Europe also to engage with Zimbabweans at a multiple level, in terms of business and trade and investment, but also in terms of people-to-people contacts. I'm very excited that the Erasmus scholarship program is expanding in the near future, and I hope that will create more exchanges with Zimbabwe and the EU, and tourism. The tourism potential is just astonishing here. So I think the question is just to get the right policy mix and the good governance in place, and Zimbabwe would be at a different level.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Tim. Just before we had this conversation, we also went into the streets, find out what people expect from diplomats and what people expect from the EU-Zimbabwe relations going forward. And these are some of the comments that they shared with us, and you will take a listen to their comments, because our partners, Frederick Newman Foundation and Heart and Soul, believe that those people who wear the shoe should be given an opportunity to speak instead of just hearing from people with authority. This is the center of the free talk that this program is modeled around.
Can Zimbabwe do away with foreign help?
Zimbabwe ndoda kubatsiro. Sisu seZimbabwe totoda kubatsiro paune dzimwe nyika. Nekuti titega now situation yatakasangana nayo COVID-19. Zvinhu zvinamira mushe, like mashandiro nematransport sector. Zvakabva zvakadzikira nemashandisirwo azvaisimbosita asina dambudziko rakadai so. And totoda rubatsiro kubva kuEurope kuti davakwanisawo kuti vhurirawo maindustries like steel productions, whether sports, like isusu vamwe totamba bhora soka vanokwanisa kutisponzawo because yeZimbabwe titega. Yes, of course maclubs ariko, but Zimbabwe inenge ichita se iri kutikundikana pakatungoti ma-European countries ngauye muZimbabwe tese anga achitibatsirawo. Then tinokumbirawo kuti se-European sisu seZimbabwe ma-European countries ationewo atisponze kuti pama-mining sectors edu atinawo mamachines mashoma, mugodi mizhinji kuti iri kudonha, vazhinji vari kufa, tichizama kutsvaga chibhora kuti tirarame. Tinokumbirawo kuti ma-ideas kuti gadzirisa ma-roads like ma-flyovers, ma-new models, not ma-old models ariko ratinawo munyika medu matinawo.
Semugari muZimbabwe munofunga kuti Zimbabwe ingararama here pasina rubatsiro kubva kune dzimwe nyika?
Kwete, nyika inorarama nedzimwe nyika ichibatsirwa nedzimwe nyika. Hakuna nyika inokwanisa kurarama iri yakazvimirira.
Pane zvinhu zvakaita sezvii?
Pane zveupfumi hatikwanise kunyika, tine zvatinowana, tine zvasingakwanise kuwana zvizhinji zvakaita semafuta ekufamba edzimotikari nezvimwe zvinhu nemapatsi emota. Hatikwanise kurarama tiri tega.
Tichitaritsa ma-sanctions akaiswa neAmerica upon Zimbabwe, ma-conditions avo vanotaura ndeyekuti Zimbabwe inoviolata ma-human rights. Munofunga kuti kupinda kunoita US neEuropean Union zviri right here kumaZimbabweans vanofanira kungosiya Zimbabwe ichifunctiona yega without intervention yeAmerica kana kuti yeEU?
Nyaya yema-human rights hakuna nyiri even kuAmerica kwacho kunototorwa ma-human rights ive munyika zhinji zvacho. Last tinopa example last year kwakauraya mutemo, hakuna nyika inonzi nema-human rights. Ingova ineni ingori racism.
Muchiti racism, saka mukufunga kuti kupindira kwavanoita muZimbabwe vachivapa ma-sanctions zviri justified here kuti America ipindire muma-issues emuZimbabwe?
Nyika nenyika ine Zimbabwe is a Soviet country. Haikwanisi kuti tinofanira kurarama nyika takazvimirira.
Yeah, as a citizen of Zimbabwe, I think Zimbabwe cannot do without foreign help. Why? Because there are some products that are from international countries that we cannot have ourselves. And there are some currencies, like foreign currency, like the US dollar. We don't have it here. Our currency is not as strong as the US dollar. So we need foreign currency from foreign countries. But all the same, after maybe after a long time in business, we as Zimbabweans, we should try our level best to do away with foreign help. Why? Because we have got all the resources that the foreign countries needs in Zimbabwe. They need more in Zimbabwe than we need more from them. So things like gold, diamonds, vegetation, water, everything is in Zimbabwe. So we as Zimbabweans, if we put our house in order, if we work hard, if we put our logistics, if we put our systems in order, we can live without them. They actually, them need us. They can need us more than we need them. Thank you.
Okay, what I can say is, as a thing of nature, no country can survive on its own. It needs help from other countries for its economy to grow. If you can see a very good example of our own country, here in Zimbabwe we've got minerals, we've got agriculture sector, we've got crops. We can import to other countries, but we can't have systems like technology, industrial technology from other countries like China. If you see right now we are surviving transport industry, we are using a good example of cars. We are importing from Japan. That's where we can get a good industry of motor. So as for best from your question, we can support each other as countries. Maybe in Africa, Europe, we are an international community. No country can survive on its own. It can only boost its economy from help of other countries. That's what I can say, and that's what I can think can help our international society, either economically, politically, socially. Those factors need to be considered so that we help each other. We get ideas from other countries. We get ideas from South Africa, China, Japan, and so forth. So, based from the question, I think I've tried to answer it.
So, thank you very much, viewers, for joining us. I was having a discussion with the EU head of mission, Ambassador Timo Olkkonen, and we spoke about a number of issues, the politics, the economy, and also the other relations that are between Zimbabwe and the EU and the international community, and how we can move forward as a country and how we can improve our relations to be able to sit on the table of nations and be recognized as such, especially dealing also with the issues of the human rights. Now, this is Free Talk, program brought to you proudly by Frederick Newman Foundation and Heart and Soul TV and Radio. And I am Dara Blessed Mhlanga for Heart and Soul TV News in the Ambassador's Garden this evening. Thank you very much, Ambassador, for having us. And
thank you, it was a pleasure.
Very much. A beautiful garden that you have.
Thank you.
This is Free Talk in partnership with Frederick Newman Foundation, our partners in free speech. Free speech is the center of development of any nation.
Musiki, Jonah,